Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests.
Oh, Hummer he was a different dog, you know. Haven't had another one like him. He was probably one of the most consistent dogs I've ever had. You know, don't matter who was handling, what was going on. When you took him to the woods, he's the same dog every time you turned him loose. When I first started hunting him in the hunts, he was still under 2 years old, and I bought him off of Virgil Crites, and I went up there and picked him up one weekend. And very next weekend, I hauled him all the way to Jamestown, hunted him in the Spring Classic, and he didn't know me from nothing, and man, you couldn't ask for a dog to handle no better than what he did, he's just total consistency every time you unsnap him, The only time, if he didn't act his normal self, you knew something was wrong with him, because he was. There was never a hunt I went to that I didn't feel like I had a chance to win it, And then, did I win all of them? No. But I always felt like I had a chance to win them.
Well, everybody, I'm your host, Colby Langford, and you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. Today, we've got Shannon and Looney on for another episode of the Good Old Dog series, and today we are talking about what many have called the GOAT, Looney's 2020 Hummer. How you doing, Shannon?
Oh, doing good. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, pretty good. So I guess to start out, I've just kind of been wondering, just about everybody's heard of Hummer. What was it that just made him so special?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. He was a dog that he just had a personality to him. I mean, you never heard from this dog in a kennel. I mean, if you heard that dog bark out there, you knew something was bad wrong, because he just had that personality. I never seen this dog ever growl at another dog. He just had he was turned really good. I ain't had the dog like him. He just never done anything to make me mad. He was just a real even turned dog, calm. He had to drive. He was a big hunting dog. When you turn him loose, you better be ready to go hunting. Because there wasn't no reverse in him.
Yeah, I'd heard that about him. I think that's kind of what he was known for, was a lot of go.
Yeah, he got that, from his mother and father. They were both big hunting dogs, and he was the same way. You cut him loose, and he gonna get treed somewhere. I could probably count on. I can probably count on 3 fingers how many times I've ever seen him come back. In his whole life, and he was just that type of dog. It didn't matter, what the conditions were or anything. He was just that kind of dog, and my brother, he hunted him some too, and he took him took him down to a wildlife management area one time, and he was, Hummer was probably 4 or 5 years old then, and it was an old cold morning, had big heavy frost on. He takes him down there. It's pretty mountainous here where we live, and he cuts that dog loose at the crack of daylight, and it was 3 or 4 hours later. He was calling me, complaining. I said, you got to think about what you're doing a little bit here. You knew that. Oh, Hummer, he sunk in there about 1.5 miles across 3 hollows, and it took him about 2 hours to get to him and 2 hours back to the truck. So he said he was about had enough out of one tree. But he was that type of dog, but most of the time, he wouldn't pass squirrels up, though. He'd treat the first one to come to. He was a hard tree dog, He it didn't matter how long you took you to get to him. He was going to be there. He treed real hard. There's a lot of people like that about him. He was real loud, big mouth, hear him a long ways. Shoot, you could hear him in there probably a mile. And he definitely had a good mouth, especially when he's young.
Let's back up just a little bit. Shannon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into dogs and kind of your background a little bit. I know you mentioned your brother. I figured you'd probably touch on him while we were there.
Yeah. We've been. I had dogs growing up. We're from Grundy, Virginia, and we had a few old hounds growing up. Never did have a good dog, back when I was a kid. Had several dogs, had a few hounds, had a feist, and I had probably the best dog I had when I was a kid was a Norwegian Elkhound Shepherd mix, and it would tree some squirrels. But we really, we really didn't get into cur dogs. It's probably 10, 15 years ago, something like that. First dog we got, hunted hounds off and on, just different times. I've had a few coon hunted a little bit, and but we hadn't got into squirrel hunting much. And about, I don't know, it's probably 15 years ago now that we decided to get a pup. And the first pup we got was a Kimmerbred dog, and it didn't turn out. We kind of did that season, and it didn't make it. So we ended up buying a dog from Alan Franklin, called him up, and I think we got his number out of Full Cry or something like that. We didn't know him. My brother called him, and he just asked him if he had any young dogs for sale. And he had what ended up being 2020 Tank, Hummer's daddy. And Brian went up there and got him, and he was just a started dog. He was about a year old, and that's where we got started. We started hunting him, and he was already treeing when we bought him, but he was just started. You could take him out and kill a couple squirrels with him, but we started coon hunting him also, and he turned into a pretty nice coon dog. He had a lot of hunt, had a big nose. Turned out to be a real nice dog, especially for just getting into it. We kind of got lucky there, I guess. It got a real nice dog pretty quick, but and then we hunted him for a long time. He ended up winning the OMCBA World Coon Hunt with him. and we hunted him several years, and we ended up buying Hummer's mommy. She was a real nice dog. She was a street breed dog out of Mountain Jackson, and bought her off. Well, bought her off Chad Harston, but Merle Seeley was one who, we're good friends, and we caught him. Told him what, we've been looking for a female because we want to raise a litter of pups. And we traveled around and tried 2 or 3 out, just couldn't hardly find what we was looking for, and we called Merle and told him what we was looking for, and he said, I know exactly where the dog is you want. So we went and got her and bred her to Tank, and that's where Hummer come from.
Okay.
But that's kind of how we got started in these dogs. He just started out with them too and went from there.
Where did the 2020 in the name come from?
Well, that's my brother. He came up with that. My brother is an eye doctor, and he came up with that. And I'm in the eye industry also. I'm an optician. I make eyeglasses, but he came up with that through his work. He came up with that early on, and it just kind of stuck and kind of took off. It's kind of recognizable, and it was a pretty good kennel name.
So, you remember how many pups were in that litter he was out of?
Yeah, I think they were 7 puppies, and but every one of them got killed but 2. They was about, I'd say, 4 weeks old, and up there where my brother lived, the dog pound is right there, right beside of him, and there was a stray dog come up there and killed every one of them puppies except Hummer and a female puppy, and Brian just had them out running loose, and one day, and before he knew it, that thing had killed. I think it killed 5 of them, and the other female we give to Merle Seeley, and he give it a puppy shot, and it died. So the Hummer was the only one out of that litter that made it. A little bit of bad luck there, but. Yeah, up there at his house, instead of people taking their animals up to the pound, they'll just come up there and dump them out, And he's always got stray cats and dogs coming up there to his house, and just had a bit of bad luck there.
Yeah. Did you guys ever make that cross again?
Yeah, we did. Sure you've heard of 2020 Festus. He's the same cross,
Mm-hmm.
And I think we made that cross 3 times, I think. And we made some nice dogs. Probably Festus and Hummer was the 2 nicest ones that I can think of off the top of my head, but there's several nice dogs come out of that cross.
Well, what
it was.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was pretty successful cross.
Well, what was Hummer like as a pup?
Well, we raised him up until and it was a year. It was a bad year. He was a nice pup, acted good, and it was a bad year that year, and there was no nuts, and we didn't have any squirrels at all. And we couldn't even hardly, and all we did that year was coon hunt, Tank. And because they just wasn't no squirrels at all, and I told my brother, I said, we might as well sell this pup. I said, we ain't got no squirrels to hunt him on. And, Virgil Kreitz called and wanted to buy the pup. He was 5 months old. And he come and got him and took him home. And I think, shoot, he had him treeing within a day or two. It might have been the same day he took him home. You know, he treed about the first squirrel he ever seen. You know, it wasn't far, it wasn't long. You know, I know he didn't have him over 2 days before he was sending videos of him treeing. So he was a real early starting pup, you know. And you know, Virgil, of course, Virgil's a dog trainer. You know, he's one of the best. He does real good with pups. You know, he gets a lot out of them, and he's got a lot of patience and fools with them a lot. You know, he started a lot of dogs from me. You know, I bought a lot of dogs off of him, and he's been real good to us. We good friends, but Virgil hunted him, and you know, just kept hunting him, and he just kept getting, you know, better and better. He, you know, he started taking him to hunts when he was 10, 11 months old, and you know, he just started winning. And you know, I had a young dog at the time. I had bought one out of off of Alan Franklin out of Thunder Sport, his Candy Jewel female, and he made a real nice dog. And you know, I told, and we got in the final cast of the junior hunt. I told Brian, my brother, I said, if he wins this hunt, I said we'll keep him. But I said if he don't, I said just sell him, and try to get Hummer, you know. And so you know, he didn't win that cast. Gary Brown won that cast, and so we got home, and I put the dog up for sale. He sold pretty quick, and got Virgil on the phone. Said I said I like to buy a dog, and he said I really didn't want to sell him. And Virgil, he won't ever price you a dog. You just gotta make him an offer, you know. he won't ever price him. So I said, I just sold this other dog for this amount. I said, would you take that for him? And he said, yeah. So I went up there and hunted with him, and then there's a Virginia State hunt that I met him at, and Hummer won the hunt and won the state championship up there. And so we went out, with him all day, and we got back. I told him to load him up in my truck, and I handed him a big wad of money and bring him home. He was about, I don't know, 20 months old or something at that time, you know. And got him home and really, really enjoyed him. He was a super nice dog.
We all know that he was pretty well get gone and wouldn't come check. But what did he hunt like as far as his nose type and just kind of his hunt style?
Well, he was real fast. You know, he was one of them type dogs that, you know, and his mother was like that also. You know, you cut him loose, and you know he was like a streak leaving, and his mother was like that. Now his father was a deep hunting dog, but he wasn't like that. He was more of just a steady go dog, you know. But when you cut Hummer loose, you know, he kicked dirt in your face. You know, he was gone. He hunted with his head up. You know, he's like a streak through the woods. That's one thing, you know, that really helped him in the hunts. You know, he's usually always treed pretty quick. You know, he'd get through the timber, and when he treed, you know, I could tree him. You know, just one bark, I could tree him, because if he barked, he was treed. You know, very, very seldom did he ever move. You know, it's very, very seldom. You know, every once in a while he might move just a little, but not very often. So, you know, he was pretty much a one bark tree dog, and You know, that kind of helps in the hunts too. You know, if you're
Mm-hmm.
pretty confident, then you know you can tree them pretty quickly. But you know, and he's a hard tree dog. I like that about him. You know, he didn't shut up much. He would chew just a little bit, but you know, he never would quit barking even when he's done. You know, he was constantly barking. But you know, that was probably, you know, the only fault he had was he'd chew a little bit. But you'd never know he was doing it because he never quit barking when he was doing it, you know. But he was a real, you know, real pretty hard tree dog. He, you know, 100 barks a minute, something like that, you know, most of the time. And he's pretty accurate, you know, but he, you know, on a bad day, he can still get treed, you know, and that's what you got to have. But he would have a lot of squirrels too. But you could, you know, the year he won the LNCBA World Hunt, you know, that morning cast we went out there. Daggone, it was cold that morning, and there was a big heavy frost on. Squirrels wasn't moving. It was one of those years. There wasn't a lot of squirrels in Jamestown. You know, it's hit or miss down there. But there was a few, and we went out there and we turned them dogs loose. And we hunted in an hour, and you know, no, hadn't heard a peep from any dog. And Hummer, you know, shoot, he'd been gone since we turned him loose. The other two dogs had been in several times, kicking in. But they couldn't get treed either. You know, old Hummer, he's gone. So we decided to call time out. And I told, you know, me and my brother was with me, and I told him, I said, that dog's treed somewhere. I said, you know, so we turned the Garmin on. He's in there about a mile, a little over. And I told my brother, I said, you run in there and get him. Because in the OCBA, you only got about 30 minutes, you know, to get them and get back. And I said, you break the run in there, and I'll meet you halfway. And you run him back. And and we did. He run, just flat run in there and got him and ran him back halfway to me. And I run through the woods and barely got him back. And before the 30 minutes was up, you know, from the timeout. Man, I just barely made it. I mean, I had like 30 seconds. I had to stop on truck. And, well, we hunted on, and Hummer ended up making one tree and won that cast, you know, with 100 circle that morning. And ended up going on and winning the whole thing, you know, the whole hunt. As the first world championship he won. But he was definitely he's the top dog. If there's one out there he's gonna find it, you know. Because he had drive like none other, you know. It's kind of funny, you know. He would, you know, I was at a hunt down in Kentucky. I had a guy that was wanting to breed a female to him. And, you know, I said, we can do it there at lunchtime or whatever. And he bring his dog down. And I said, well, I hate to do this right here, you know, in the parking lot, everybody looking. I said, let's just walk over here in the woods, you know, and out of sight from everybody. And, you know, Hummer, he wouldn't even try to breed her, you know. He thought he was going hunting. Yeah. We ended up having to take him out of the woods before he'd even breed that dog, you know. But if he thought he was going hunting, that's all he had on his mind, you know. He was a pretty special dog. When you had him in the woods, he only had one thing on his mind, and that was getting treed. But you know, we coon hunted him some too, you know. But he wasn't. He was a decent coon dog, but he's more of a medium nose type dog. Now his daddy was a real coon dog. He had a real big nose, he tree coons that other dogs couldn't even smell. He tree old layup coon that I seen hounds wouldn't even bark up the tree. And Hummer was more, more of a medium nose type dog. And but he would tree coons too. He we hunt coon hunting, quite a bit. One time, my brother he was a little bit sick, being sick, and he got to feeling better. And he said, thought he wanted, he's got a pretty good place to hunt up there just behind his house. And he said, well, I believe I'll go up here and turn old Hummer loose and see if he can tree coon real quick. We had a few feeders out there. And usually, he can just get treed pretty quick. And he cut him loose, and old Hummer, he sunk in there and never did hit on nothing. He ended up going a couple miles back through there and got treed. And Brian, and I wasn't even with him. And, Brian, it was about 11:30, I'd say, when he called. And he said, man, I've got down in here and got in a big laurel patch. And he said, I'm about sick. He said, you're going to have to come in here and get me. I said, come and get you. He said, I'm right here above Walmart. And I said, how am I going to get in there and get you? He said, I don't know, but he said, I can't get out of here. He said, I'm sick. He had the flu or something. But I drove up to Walmart, and there's a big old high wall right there. And, where they cut the mountain off to put the Walmart in there, and I could shine my light up there, and I could hear a Hummer up there treeing. And right on the edge of that high wall is where he was treed, and I could see, there's three sets of eyes up that tree. There's three coons up that tree. And Brian, he still hadn't ever got to him. He was sick, and he finally, I said, well, you're going to have to go in there and get him, I said, there ain't no way I can get up this high wall. I said, that just ain't going to happen. He finally got in there and got him, and I ended up having to walk about 2 miles in there and get him out on the ride him out on his four-wheeler. I believe that was the last time he took old Hummer King. He said he had enough of it.
Yeah. So when you cut him, was he more of a straight line dog, or would he cut the woods up pretty good?
Well, when he was first leaving, he'd leave pretty fast in a straight line. But, usually within 100 yards, he's cutting right or left, He wasn't one of those dogs who just run in there 500-600 yards and then start hunting. He was hunting as soon as you cut him loose. You couldn't. And his mother was like that. She was a real hard, fast hunter. She hunted with her head up. She was a little hotter nosed, and she was a tree dog. She was a 100-bark a minute tree dog too. She was a super hard tree dog. Lots of hunt, and stay tree forever. Merle was telling me before I bought her, he was down there laying between her legs, and he was talking about he'd leave her, cut her loose and let her get treed and leave her for an hour or two, and hunt other dogs around her, pups, and then go in there and get her, and she'd be right there. She was a hard tree dog, and I credit a lot of it to her. She was a real good reproducing female, and Tank he reproduced some nice dogs too. A lot of different nice dogs out of him. And but Hummer, he took a little bit of both out of both of them. See qualities out of both. But yeah, he would leave there on a dead round, but he usually was cutting the woods up pretty good. But wherever he is going, he's on a dead run to get there.
Hmm. So when he was in his prime, if you took him and pulled him out of the dog box and you stand there on tailgate, can you just tell us what you'd be looking at? Just as far as his conformation, his color, his build, headset, ear set,
Oh yeah,
dues, that kind of stuff.
yeah. He was real. He was a good looking dog. Had a real big blocky head on him. It's probably about 48 pound, a little bit bigger dog. He was a little bigger. Kind of a brownish, grayish brindle color, kind of lighter brindle. Everybody, talked about how big his head was. He had a great big old head on him. Good conformation. I don't think he had to. He might have had to clothes. I can't remember if he did or not. But he was a real good looking dog. Everybody talked about how good looking dog he is. As he got, this line of dogs, get a gray muzzle pretty early. Usually by the time they're 4 or 5 years old, they got a gray muzzle, and it didn't show up on him as much as like his daddy was a black dog, and it really showed up on him. But it didn't show up as much on Hummer because he's kind of lighter colored. But yeah, he was a real good looking dog, muscled up. He is probably one of the better looking dogs I've had, but real stout, athletic looking dog, But he was a super nice dog.
Well, we all know that he was quite a stud dog and reproduced well. What can you tell us about him being a
Yeah,
stud dog?
yeah. Well, he's kind of the once in a lifetime dog. He was an excellent squirrel dog that was a excellent competition dog, and he was an excellent reproducer. It's hard to find all those three things in one dog. He bred a lot of females, and he Hummer's pups, just about all of them would treat. They all didn't make top dogs, but a lot of them did make top dogs. But the majority of them, if they was given any kind of chance at all, they would treat. And that made him real popular. With people. Some of these dogs are hard, are not, as tree minded and a lot of his pups were, and that made him, really sought after as a stud dog, was because he got the reputation for his pups treeing early and, being real tree minded. And, that really set him off, we had we had people come from all over, far away as Texas to breed to him, and Iowa, all the way Missouri, I had some people drove a long way. I had one guy from Texas, drove 22 hours straight just to get here to breed that dog. And bred that female, jumped back in the truck, and headed back. They was we actually sold Hummer, after he won the World Hunt, and we ended up buying him back about a year later with a good friend of ours, Greg Maynard. And Greg started hunting him, and Greg, hunted and won most of the world championships on him, and bred him a lot. He lives in Ohio, and a lot of squirrel dog hunters around that area, and bred him a whole lot. While he was down there, he was down Greg's for a couple of years, until we got him. We ended up buying all of him back, and getting him back. in full, but a lot of his success in the competition world, was Greg taking him to a bunch of hunts. Greg, he liked the competition hunts, and he'd travel all over, hauling him to the hunts, and that really helped too, because everybody likes to breed to a winner,
Mm-hmm.
But that helped too, as far as people wanting to breed came. But he was a real good reproducer. He a lot of his pups turned out, and a lot of them some super nice dogs. And they, still, there's a few out there right now. That are really going to show up in the hunts this year, that are super nice.
Do you remember about how old he was the first time you bred him?
He was pretty young, he was about 2.5 years old the first time we bred him, and we really didn't start breeding him heavy until he was probably about 4. The first person to ever breed to him was Greg Maynard. He is the first person that ever bred a dog to him. And, Greg, he was after me. He hunted with me. I drawed out with him down there. He was after me for a long time to sell him, and I never would sell him, But he was the first one that bred to him. But yeah, we didn't start breeding him heavy probably until he was about 4.
Got any idea about how many times he was bred? Just out of curiosity.
Shoot, no. A bunch. Yeah, he was bred a bunch. He was popular. I have no clue how many times, but he was bred a bunch. He had a lot of pups out there. And and when you got a lot of pups out there and they get spread around, they get to doing good. It gets the word out pretty good.
You still hunting?
What was that?
Oh, I was gonna say, are you still hunting stuff out of him?
Yeah. I got a young dog right now that's about 15 months old. That's out of Hummer, and I'm looking forward to see what he does. He's getting treated a lot, acting pretty good. I don't know if he'll make the one I'm looking for, but he's acting pretty good. If I don't keep him, somebody will like him. He's got some pretty good actions, and then. Merle Seeley's got one out of the same litter. That's just. I'd be surprised if she don't make some big headlines this fall in the hunts. She's next level for her age.
Mm-hmm.
For 15 months old, she's pretty nice. Last year he killed, I don't know, he killed like 80 squirrels to her the last couple months of the season. She's really nice, especially for her age. So she's going to be a tough one to beat come December down in Jamestown.
What'd you say her name was?
Shoot, okay. If you wouldn't ask me, I could have told you right off my head.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah. Shoot. It'll come to me. We'll have to rotate back.
Okay. Did you notice anything particular about what seemed to work best with breeding on him? Was it doing any line breeding or particular crosses?
We bred him to about anything and everything, and it really didn't matter. I mean, he would throw good pups. It didn't matter what we bred him to. And that was another thing that, was real nice about him. It didn't matter what we bred him to. And he would throw tree dogs. I mean, he's just one of those freaks of nature that we line bred him some and had nice pups. We crossbred him, had nice pups, and did total wild crosses. That produced nice pups. So I wouldn't say that it was any certain cross or blood or this or that or other, because we had success breeding about anything. He was just a natural reproducer of tree dogs. He would throw a dog that would usually tree, and that's a pretty big accomplishment for a curt dog. Not all of them made top-notch competition dogs, or I ain't saying that, but I'm just saying, he threw tree dogs. Mm-hmm. And not all of them made it, they ain't a dog a lot that throws 100%, but the majority of them, if that's given a chance, they made a tree dog.
Did you guys keep any semen off of him?
Yeah, we still got some. We every now and then, I had somebody call and want some of it, and sell a straw here and there, but not very often. It's so expensive. Of course, the price of the semen is pretty high, and then the shipping has got kind of outrageous, and it's $700-800 just to ship it anymore, and then you have to pay a vet to do it, and then there ain't no guarantees. So
mm-hmm.
There ain't no guarantees you're getting pups, and the only thing we guarantee is that the semen's alive. When they unthaw it. It's a gamble. So you're talking, $1,500 gamble. Ain't too many people want to take that chance, but there's a few out there. Everyone's like these dogs, and we'll do it. But we don't use much of it, Just I don't ever breed a dog just to sell puppies, I never have. Only time I've ever bred a dog was when I was wanting a pup myself. For as far as my personal dogs, I don't breed them. I don't breed them to sell puppies, I'll sell a few, just to. But if I breed one of my personal dogs, just because I want a pup,
Yeah.
But we've got some semen on him, and hopefully be hunting Hummer dogs for a long time,
So what would you say his biggest strength as a stud dog in general, like as far as what he throws? Is it the, besides, I know you said that just about all of them came to be tree dogs, but was there anything else that he really stood out as far as throwing trait wise?
Well, he reproduced some really nice competition dogs also, and every dog, usually in most litters, you'd have one that would turn out to be a really nice competition dog that people were, looking for, and he would throw that type of dog too. It takes a certain makeup to make a competition dog. Not everybody likes that type of dog, but they are, to win a hunt, you got to have a certain recipe, and he would throw that type of dog too. That's if you got a dog that's producing dogs that win, that dog's gonna get bred, you know, because people like that, and you know, squirrel competition hunting is pretty popular, and you know, people like to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and there's a bunch of his pups that done a lot of winning. You know, when you look up there and you see on the top 10, and you got 4 or 5 of them out of Hummer. Well, that's saying quite a bit. You know, when you look at a pretty big hunt, that your dog's throwed 4 out of the 10 that's up there. You know, that's saying a whole lot. You know, but he would throw all types. You know, but like I said, I would say the biggest accomplishment of, you know, his reproduction ability was throwing tree dogs, regardless, you know, whether there's competition dogs or just pleasure dogs. You know, I'm pretty confident if I get a Hummer puppy that you know, it's gonna make a squirrel dog.
What?
And you know, that's something you don't see every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to find, and you know, I think that's what makes Hummers so special. You know, there's a bunch of nice reproducing tree dogs out there, but you know, Hummer had, you know, what made him special is he was a nice pleasure dog. You know, you could take him out and kill a sack full of squirrels, and you could take him on the weekend and win, you know, a world hunt with him. You know, he had all the ingredients that you're looking for, and that I'm looking for, and I ain't found since. You know, I mean, it's something hard to find. I mean, it just is. They just don't come along every day that's got all 3 of those ingredients. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can have one or you don't have the other, or you know, vice versa. It's just hard to find a real complete dog, you know, that can reproduce and be a good pleasure dog and be just a good all around dog. Never have a minute's trouble out of him. You know, like I said, he is probably the best dog I've ever had around the house. You know, I handle like a youngin'. You know, he was real intelligent. Could bring him in the house. He'd just lay there on the floor until you got ready to put him in a kennel. You know, he's just a real good-natured dog. I sure would like to have another just like him.
I think everybody knows that he won just about everything there was to win. But as far as his comp hunting accomplishments, do you have any kind of an idea about like maybe how many world hunts he won, or what kind of what?
He's won 5 world titles. He's won the OMCBA, the WTBA World Hunt, the USDC World Hunt, the UKC World Hunt, and the NSD World Hunt also. So he's won five world hunts and 5 different registries, you know. So he's won them all of all the major squirrel dog hunts. You know, people put on squirrel dog hunts. He's won every one of them, and he's produced a lot of world champions. You know, he's produced several. I can't remember. Shoot, you know, my brother, he keeps up with the stats and stuff better than I do. You know, he's got all that stuff wrote down. You'd probably been better off to talk to him. But he was a shoot. I don't know how many state hunts and stuff he won. You know, he won the Virginia State Hunt the day I bought him. And, he's won a bunch of. He's even won a few night hunts. You know, few coon hunts also. But we didn't coon hunt him a lot, but every now and then I put him in a coon hunt here and there, you know. But you know, he wasn't what I call. He is a much better squirrel dog than he was a coon dog.
If you could go back, is there anything that you would have done different if you were to do it all over again?
I probably wouldn't have sewed him when I sewed him that time. I would have never. I didn't at the time. Let the money get the best of me and sewed him, and I wished I wouldn't have ever sewed him even though you know he wasn't gone but about a year and a half. You know, I kind of missed out on that. I wish we would have never sewed him. But you know, we got him back, and I would say that's about the only thing. You know, he was sure a pleasure to own. He's a once in a lifetime dog.
Yeah. What was his retirement like?
Oh, you know, I hunted him. Shoot, I hunted him up until until he died. Really, I was still taking hunting. You know, he was probably, I think the last hunt I took him to, he was either 8 or 9. He was slowing down just a little bit. You know, he would look like the last hunt I took him to, I think, was one of those big USDC hunts. And, you know, he would look real good the first round. And you could tell it was, you know, those three round hunts in a day was wearing on him a little bit, you know. But yeah, I hunted him up till he died, you know. And he, like I said, he was a pleasure to keep. You know, he just never had no trouble out of him. You know, like you do some. I got a couple of his sons out here right now that they like to bark a little bit. You never hear nothing out of old Hummer. But yeah, he hunted up until the day he died. He was constantly hunting.
How old did he get to be?
Yeah. He was pretty young. He was just 10 when he died. You know, I don't. Doc vet said he thinks he had a stroke. You know, because when he died, you know, he just couldn't. You know, he couldn't get up. He was just laying there, and you know, I took him to the vet, and they couldn't do nothing for him, and it was probably, I don't know, it tore me up pretty bad for a dog. You know, usually I don't get too tore up, but he was special. You know, he probably thought more of him than anyone I've ever had. You know, and I liked his daddy. I used to think I liked his daddy just about as good, but you know, old Hummer, he's just pretty special. You know, a special dog. Still got some fond memories of him. Think back on, go back and look at some pictures and stuff. But you know, I've got a video on my phone. You know, he's probably 10 years old. He's treed up behind my house. You know, he's still slinging slobber and treeing just as hard as he always did. You know, 10 years old, he still get it done even at that age.
You said he was a hard tree dog. Would he kind of set back, or was he feet on the wood, or would he jump any, or?
Nah, he's up on the wood type dog. You know, he's a little active around the tree, which probably, you know, I didn't prefer, but he would go around the tree some, and that. And like I said earlier, he would chew just a little bit. Didn't really care for that. He had his faults just like any dog, but how it is when he's your dog and you like him, you look over him faults.
Mm-hmm.
I can find a hole about in any dog, and he had his faults too. But when you're fond of one, you look over them.
Yeah.
And everybody's like that, I guess. Everybody likes their own dog a little better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people hunting with old Hummer, and a lot of people had high praise for him. He's that type of dog. He was pretty impressive. But a lot of people liked him, and it wasn't just me. Yeah, he's my dog, and I always thought he was better than anything out there. But everybody's like that about their own dog.
Yep.
And to me, there wasn't a dog out there better than him. And that's just how I felt about it, and still do. There's probably dogs out there better than him, but to me, they wasn't. It ain't a dog I hunted with my whole life I'd rather have than him. So, but he was my dog, and that's what makes these dogs special. You form a little relationship with a dog, and the fond memories, and you can look back on them, and that's what it's all about.
He sounded like he was great when I wish I could have got to go hunting with him. I don't know if I'd have wanted to in the mountains and let him gut me like that, but
well, he didn't take too much pity on you when it's come time to hunt. But if squirrels was out, you didn't have no trouble. He'd be treated no time. But you take him out there on a bad day, he'd hurt you a little bit. He definitely in these mountains, is pretty tough. And that type of dog ain't a lot of fun for a lot of people to hunt. But especially in the mountains, flatland, it ain't too bad. But he wasn't the type of dog you want to take a young kid with. Just wear a kid out. Didn't matter if it's getting treed pretty quick or not, because if he was loose, you was walking to him treed.
Mm-hmm.
Because he usually didn't take him long to get under one.
Well, we're about up on time. You got any other good stories about him you want to tell to kind of close us out?
Well, no, I think I've about covered everything about him. He's just a special dog, and I'd like to have another one just like him, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. I keep looking and keep trying, but we'll see. I hope to have another one like him.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, I sure appreciate you agreeing to come on here and do the interview about Hummer, and I'm sure everybody else is going to enjoy listening to it just as much as I enjoyed making it.
All right, buddy. You're welcome.
All right. Well, everybody, take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.